so in this video, I'm going to share with you my 5 favorite steelhead rods as part of my 5th annual Steelhead December series. I started this series 5 seasons ago where I dedicate the entire month of December to winter steelhead fishing. I post new fishing videos every Friday at 6 p.m. plus gear and tip videos midweek like this one here. During the first annual Steelhead December series, I posted a video about my 5 favorite steelhead rods, but things have changed a little bit in my ever-evolving steelhead fishing brain. Some have stayed on the list and others have been removed and new ones added. So let's get started.
Oh, you know what? That looks like a coho. Looks like an old coho. Oh no, maybe it's just a big buck.
If you're new here, I'm Barry Rager. Welcome to Rage Fishing. On this channel, I cover all types of fishing, but winter steelhead are my #1 species. I exclusively fish G.Loomis rods and Shimano reels for steelhead, bass, and trout. That said, I'm not sponsored by either. I assure you I've paid for every rod and reel you see on this channel. I also understand that not everybody wants to spend that kind of money on fishing equipment. And that's okay, this video can still be helpful because for each rod model, I'm going to share the specs, so length, power, and action, so you can take that information to find a rod in your price point with similar specs. To start out with, I'm going to quickly explain the difference between power and action. I'm going to use this little 5.5 foot trout rod to demonstrate because I can't put a steelhead rod together in my office. So power is the amount of force it takes to flex a rod. So this being an ultralight rod, it doesn't take a whole lot of force to flex that rod, which makes sense because this is designed for fishing for smaller trout in smaller creeks with small lures. On the other end of the power spectrum would be an extra heavy. The only extra heavy rods I have are for salmon trolling. So they're designed to fight bigger fish and troll 10 to 12 ounces of weight, let's say. Now, action is where the rod flexes. So this is a fast action rod, so it flexes the majority in the tip. On the other end of the action spectrum is a slow action, which flexes all the way into the handle like a fly rod. And right in the middle is moderate. All those things are important for steelhead fishing because depending on the technique you're using, you're going to want different powers and actions, and I'll explain those as we go with each model. Over the years, I've had several questions about why steelhead fishing rods are so long. Those of us that grew up around salmon and steelhead fishing understand, but it's a great question for somebody new to steelhead fishing. Steelhead rods generally start out at about 8.5 foot and can go up into the 13-foot range. The reason steelhead rods are long is to allow for better casting distance and line control, especially when float fishing. Also, they act as huge shock absorbers because steelhead fight at another level, especially in boulder-choked rivers with heavy current. Alright, so let's get started with the countdown. I'm going to start at number 5 and work my way down to number 1. For each of these rods, I'm going to put links down in the description field if you want to check current pricing and availability. I'm also going to put an alternative rod at a lower price point because, again, I understand not everybody wants to spend that kind of money. So let's get going. So number 5 is my G.Loomis Steelhead Series 1045C casting rod. This is a 8'8", medium heavy, fast action. It's paired up with an old Shimano Corrado 201 E7, excellent reels, thing's probably about 15 years old. I should explain the G.Loomis numbering system really quick. Being 1045, 5 is the power. That's changed and we'll get to that when we get to some of the newer rod numbers. But at that time, 5 indicated medium heavy. 104 is the length of the rod in inches, so this is 8'8", so it's essentially 8.5 foot. I like a shorter rod for drift fishing because I want to have good casting accuracy, and especially if I'm fishing out of a boat with another person. I just don't want a rod that's longer than this. Also, the reason I want a casting rod for drift fishing is I want to be able to extend my drift. I'm generally drift fishing when the river's a little bit higher, so I'm using a little bit more weight. And being able to control everything with your thumb, whether it's allowing a little bit more line out by free spooling just a little bit, or if you get that strike, you can just put your thumb pressure down and set that hook. But this is number 5. It's been an excellent fishing rod. Again, they discontinued the Steelhead series, but they make a similar rod in the GCX and IMX line as well. And I'll put those links down below. So number 4 is my G.Loomis GL3 1024S. This is my oldest G.Loomis steelhead rod. I bought it in 2003. It's a 8.5 foot medium power fast action spinning rod. It's rated 8 to 12 pound test. I use this for spinners and spoons. It's got a Shimano Stratic 2500 on there. Right now I'm testing some Power Pro Super Slick braid, but normally I'm just running 10 pound test P-Line CX. I like an 8.5 foot rod for spinner and spoon fishing for casting accuracy, and I like a fast action because I can feel the thump of those spinner blades or spoons, and it also has that hook setting ability. Now, G.Loomis discontinued the GL3 lineup a number of years ago. It used to be their mid-quality level steelhead rod, but recently they came out with the GCX lineup, which they have a rod with similar specs. I actually bought one of them to test out this year. It is the 1022. Now, like I had mentioned, they've changed the numbering system. So what used to be a 4, like in the 1024S as a medium, now it's a 2. And this one's actually rated mag medium because it's 8 to 15 pound test. What I was told is mag medium is a little bit more power than a medium, but not quite to the level of a medium heavy. But I'm looking forward to trying out this rod in this upcoming steelhead season. So number 3 is my G.Loomis GCX 1141. This is a 9'6" medium light power fast action. I have it paired up with the Shimano Vanford 3000. Awesome reel. This thing only weighs 6.3 ounces. It's got a 6.4 to 1 gear ratio, which takes up 37 inches of line per turn of the handle. That's really important, especially for float fishing, because if you have a bobber go down, you want to tighten up that line and get that hook set. This is the most versatile rod in the entire lineup, in my opinion. It's formerly the 1143 E6X, so the GCX is the new model in that particular rod with some slight upgrades, and I'll cover those in just a minute here. But this rod is the jack of all trades. I've used it for float and bead fishing, float and jig fishing, drift fishing, and throwing spinners and spoons. The fast action is nice, especially for drift fishing and throwing spinners and spoons, just so you can feel the thump of that blade, or you can feel your terminal tackle while you're drift fishing floating down the river. Also, it recovers fast to pick up that line when you do have a float go down, because I'm using it with 20-pound super slick braid. I like a 9'6" rod for float fishing because the majority of rivers that I fish in Oregon are small to mid-size, and they have a bunch of trees and brush along the bank lines. I've fished 10.5 foot rods, and it feels like I'm always dragging them up into the branches. So 9.5 foot is what you'll find in my hand most of the time. So when the GCX rod lineup came out, I did a complete gear review on them. If you want more information on the GCX, I'll put a link above to that video. But really quick, I'll explain the differences in the GCX versus the old E6X. One, and most importantly, is they upgraded the guides. These are tangle-free guides, which is really important, especially if you're float fishing. They put the hook keeper on the bottom of the blank versus having it on the side. I'm sure every fisherman's experience when you go to cast and your line catches that hook keeper and everything just slaps in the water in front of you. So that's an improvement. They've also improved the butt section of the rod. This is capped and then sanded versus just capped. And as I've already kind of explained, the numbering system is a little bit different. So this being an 1141, the 1 now is medium light compared to the E6X, which 1143, the 3 was medium light. So G.Loomis does offer this rod in a float series with the same specs, so it's 10 foot versus 9'6". That may be a rod that I would choose if I was fishing larger rivers without the challenging overhang. So number 2 is my G.Loomis IMX 1163. This is a 9'8", medium light power, moderate fast action. I have it paired up with a Shimano Stratic CI4 3000. They don't make this reel anymore. It has been replaced by the Vanford. I use this rod for light floats and jigs. Like you can see here, I've got one of the new B&R low pro floats on there. It's a little balsa wood float, and I've got an 1/8 ounce jig. I spool this reel up with straight 8-pound monofilament. That's why the moderate fast action, and I have to say that I really believe this is more of a moderate action, is important. The moderate action acts as a better shock absorber than, let's say, a fast action. So when I'm using this rod, generally when the water is low and clear, with that 8-pound line, I really want that extra shock absorbency. So this line of IMX has been discontinued, but they do make a similar rod in the new IMX Pro. The new one's called the 1171. It's an inch longer, but it's got the same specs. This was my #1 rod if you watched the previous 5 favorite rods video. So now let's see what rod has knocked this into the #2 spot. Alright, so my new favorite steelhead rod, you'll see this in my hands most of the time, is the GCX 1143. It's a 9'6", medium heavy power, fast action. I have it paired up with the Shimano Vanford A3000, which is the newest model of Vanford. It has a few improvements over the original Vanford. If you want more information on that reel, I did a gear review on it. I'll put a link above. But this rod and reel excels at bead and float fishing, which I think is the most effective way for anglers of all skill levels to catch steelhead. So let me tell you the story how I discovered this rod model. Every year, my buddy Dave and I do this series titled Steelhead Road Trip. We try to hit as many rivers as we can in a weekend, oftentimes looking for new water. Well, during Steelhead Road Trip 2022, we found some fish in a river that were a little bigger than we were used to. So after that trip, I decided to look for something with just a little bit more backbone. Even though we were able to land those fish with our medium light and medium power rods, it was really a challenge. So I looked on G.Loomis's website and I found this rod here actually, which is the E6X 1145. I didn't actually use this rod until the following year because I was a little concerned about it being a medium heavy. I just thought, well, the fights won't be quite as fun as they would be with the 1143 E6X, which was the medium light. But boy was I wrong. The first fish I hooked with this was during Steelhead Road Trip 2023, and it was a small steelhead, probably only 3 to 4 pounds. Let's take a look at that footage.
Okay.
So you got the neck?
Yeah.
So as you can see from that video, this rod was still flexed pretty good for being such a small steelhead. And also what I realized is that medium heavy power also gives me just a little bit more backbone to be able to land those fish just a little bit quicker. So quickly, this became my #1 bead rod, and I started fishing the 1143, which was the medium light E6X, as my jig rod. So these rods are still very lightweight considering they're a medium heavy, but they're very strong. Let me show you another clip from Steelhead Road Trip 2024 where I hooked a big wild buck and it ran me down into some rapids and got hung up on a boulder.
Come on, man. I'm pretty much just holding my spool at this point.
So I was putting a lot of pressure on that fish. And not only is that a testament to how powerful this rod is, but also my entire bead rigging. It's just worth it to get those wild fish landed and released as soon as possible. So when G.Loomis discontinued the E6X series, I decided to try the rod with the same specs in the GCX, and it has not disappointed. This has been an excellent rod. It's very lightweight. It's very comparable to the E6X, obviously, but it's just got a few more upgrades like the tangle-free guides, and I have noticed a little bit of a reduction in the number of tip wraps that I get. So you're gonna see this rod in my hand the majority of steelhead season. Well, I hope the video was helpful. This was a fun one to make. The only thing I like more than steelhead fishing is talking about steelhead fishing. But if you have any questions whatsoever, make sure to leave them down in the comment field below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as a reminder, I'll put links to all of these rods and reels down in the description field, along with some lower priced alternatives. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.